Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 1 of Cobbletalk, a Penguin podcast. There's a "the" in there for the official name of the show, but we're not using it because of the Penguin podcast or the Penguin. Like, it's too hard to say. I'm sorry. I'm Ben, and with me here today is a whole array of beautiful people. We'll start off with the man from Belgium, Lockmort. Greetings. Hello.
Hello, Ben. Hello. Thank you for having me on your. I think, we're putting this on your channel, right? Yeah.
I think so, but it was your idea.
On the official Ben is Handsome channel. So thank you, Ben is Handsome, for having me on your channel. That's awesome. I appreciate it.
It's got to have a place to live. You've been on my channel before, not your face maybe, but you edited one of my videos one time. So you've been there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember. Oh, okay. Well, this is the second time then. Perfect.
Yeah,
Excellent.
perfect.
Well, still, thank you for having me, Ben. That's awesome of you.
We've got two men from the hurricane capital of the world, Florida, here on the show as well. Bill. Hello, Bill.
How are you?
Greetings.
Good. Thank you for having me. I was very taken aback when I was approached to do this. Locke said that he liked my analysis of TV, but now being in this room, it's obvious that I was recruited and maybe even seduced because I had hair. So
that's
why I figured
that is
it out
maybe
now,
the
ruse.
biggest thing you have going for you.
Yeah, that is the thing. You know, it's funny because I see both of you with headphones on. There is actually a condition, and it happened to me over the past few months. People will laugh, people that know me. My hair, I actually started losing my hair because I was wearing over-ear band headphones.
Yeah.
And it's actually a thing. There's actually a Latin term for it, so you know it's like serious and like a real thing when it has a Latin name. That's why I'm using these like buds right now. I know it looks kind of obnoxious, but you know, we make it work.
Fine.
But no, thank you for having me on. It's surreal to be on video with all of you celebrities. So
all of us celebrities.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of celebrities, we've also got Justin, aka Justin Guns. Hello, Justin.
What's up?
I've seen you since, but the last time I think you were on video for like public, you were a different man. You were the newly reformed, thinner, beardless Justin.
That's true. Good, the last time, it's funny because I had OBS pulled up and it shows, the last few like notifications, and it's like 2 years ago. I'm like, woof, yeah, that's about right. Yikes. Yeah. But yeah, I'm happy to be here, man. We've been talking about doing something like this over a few shows that we've been watching. So I'm excited.
Yeah. This kind of started as it was like, well, we just always talk about doing a podcast. I mean, we all do other podcasts as well. But it was like, we should do a podcast about a TV show. And then it kind of was a joke. And then it was like, well, okay, let's recruit these people. Let's do it. Here we are to talk about HBO's The Penguin. Now, I don't know about you guys. I was a big fan of the 2022 Batman movie. And of course, this universe DC's a mess. All the Batman universes are different, but at least this is in the same universe as the most recent Batman movie, aptly titled The Batman. Phenomenal movie. And of course, we probably will at some point spoil that. If you haven't seen The Batman, you might not want to watch The Penguin unless you really don't care about spoilers for it, or you're really not into superheroes, whatever. But here we are. And I guess we'll start with a broad overview. We're going to go normally episode by episode. So each week we'll have a new episode out of the podcast, which will be about that week's episode. But this week we're about episodes 1 and 2. But let's just start off with a broad overview of the first episode, titled After Hours. It picks up almost immediately after the end of The Batman, the end of the movie. I mean, honestly, like hours, days at most from that. And so I just want to hear in broad strokes before we get into the nitty gritty, what did you guys think? Justin, we'll start in reverse order. Kick it off. How'd you feel?
I thought it was great. And it's interesting because you mentioned like you probably want to avoid watching this show if you haven't watched The Batman. I actually think it does a decent job of bringing people in without needing the Batman. I mean, you're going to get a lot more out of it if you watched it. But right at the beginning, you get that little collage of news information that, kind of looks like maybe it's a couple days, maybe a week or two at most, if that really. And it sets everything up pretty well. And I mean, the story, the plot line for right off the bat is interesting. The characters are interesting. I mean, I really like it a lot. And more so now that in this case, where we watched episode 1 and 2, we're going to talk about both. After seeing the second episode, I'm even more in.
Nice. Bill.
Yeah, it was
high level.
What's up?
High level thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, high level thoughts. Yeah, it's been very good so far over 2 episodes. I took the patented Ben Smith approach where it's like, if I'm interested in something, I'm really not going to watch. I think I watched 1 trailer just to kind of see like what's the vibe they're going for, because I already knew I was kind of in. Like I trusted the creatives, all the people involved. And I think with TV, I'm usually a pretty tough sell because pacing is so important for me with episodic TV. Right from the first scene of the show I was in, for reasons which I'll go into later on. But no, yeah, I think the biggest, broadest takeaway is kind of a reminder that, I don't know, I think you all watch your Locke obviously watches his fair share of movies, and I know Ben does, and I suspect Justin does too with TV. But the kind of the one takeaway I've gotten overall is that Colin Farrell was like one of our truly great actors of our time, I think, and this just reinforced it. Yeah, I have other thoughts which I'll get into, but other than that, yeah, it's just incredibly well paced, and Colin Farrell is just like a force of nature in the show so far, as expected. So.
Sir Lockmort, let's hear it.
It's honestly blowing me away, and I wasn't expecting that because I wasn't the biggest fan of the Batman. I thought that movie was good. I thought that movie was great, even, but not. I wouldn't place it in my top 10 or even in my top 3 Batman movies. But this one
he says as he has a poster of it behind him.
Well, it's just because it's red and it's a cool color. That's true. But no, this one, the Penguin is blowing me away. The whole vibe of the show is so special. It's so unique. Beforehand, because I did watch every trailer, and I saw people talk about like, oh, this is going to be like The Sopranos. It's nothing like The Sopranos, of course. He just looks a little bit like Tony Soprano, and that's it. So it has a very unique style, which I absolutely love. I also like that it follows the Batman so closely, but it also stands on its own, which is something we don't see very often. And I also really like that we kind of see everything happening in real time. Like there's no flashbacks, there's no going back to other things. No, everything we see is happening right now, which is really cool. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
I think to your point about it being or not being like The Sopranos, I agree. It's very different than The Sopranos. But for people who are like, oh, it's a Penguin movie, it's about the bat, like it's way more Sopranos than it is superhero.
Sure.
Yeah,
of course. That's true.
And of course, it's organized crime, all that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
it's very different at the same time. So let's get in to episode 1 specifically.
What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I thought I was just the moderator here. I think I think it's really good. I think it's gritty and dark while also being humorous. And I don't think that it's, I wouldn't call this a comedy. I wouldn't even call it a dark comedy. But just the situations that our characters are placed into are humorous enough while still being dramatic to make it interesting. You've got a little bit, in my opinion, of like tropey mafia type stuff happening, and that's okay with me because I like tropey mafia stuff. That's why we like mafia movies. That's why we like things set in the dark underbelly of the world. And of course, this is even more fictional because it's set in a fictional city with fictional drugs, with fictional characters, obviously. So the fact that it gets into some of those more, mafia tie-in tropes, I'm okay with. With that said, I think most of the actual, we're going to get into the technical analysis of the show. I think the editing is overall pretty good. I think episode 2 in the one scene had some pretty shoddy stuff there, but I think other than that, it's been fantastic. The score has been really good. I think I saw that it was scored by the son of the person who scored the Batman movie,
cool.
Which is really neat. And so it sounds phenomenal. Not that necessarily that translates from father to son, but I think that's really cool. And the plot so far, like I love the Penguin. I love the character of the Penguin. I was reminiscing recently that the first time I remember the Penguin in media was it in Batman and Robin? No, it's Batman Forever. And I was a little kid, and I remember the Joker is in that movie, the Riddler's in that movie, but the Penguin has a car that he's remote controlling, and he's like on some kind of apparatus. It's Danny DeVito.
You mean Batman Returns?
Is it Batman Returns?
Yeah. Batman
There's
Returns.
so many in that same era there. Thank you. It's Batman Returns. I've seen every Batman movie. Okay, I can't be expected to remember all their names too.
Of course, yeah.
But he's like on some kind of like remote control thing, and eventually Batman figures it out and then destroys his remote control, and he's like, "Rah!" The typical Penguin thing. And I remember just feeling so bad for the Penguin because I love the Penguin because he's an outcast. Like it's just hard not to like him, and especially I think that takes even more precedent. In those movies, you weren't supposed to like him. In this show, the Penguin, he is the character that you were supposed to most relate with.
Yeah.
He's the best bad guy. He's the most wholesome bad guy in a sense, which we'll get into more in his motives and his ideas and everything. But let's move right in to the actual episode and talk through it. I want to start off with the opening scene. This sets the precedent for the entire episode, and I assume the entire, at least first season, coming right off of the death of Carmine Falcone. There's a big void in the Falcone organization, and you've got Carmine's son, of course,
Alberto,
who is presumed to be the next top dog, right? And so I want to hear you guys' thoughts on this opening scene where Penguin, Oswald Cobb, is that what they're calling him in this?
Oz.
Of course,
they're calling him Oz.
Oz Cobb. Of course, it's Oswald Cobblepot in the original lore of the character. But I want to hear you guys talk through this opening scene. We won't break down every scene by scene necessarily, but I think because this one sets the precedent for the entire rest of the episode. Kick it off. What did you guys think of the fact that Oswald's breaking in, trying to get these files and these things from the safe, and then the fact that he gets insulted and basically kills who we thought was going to be the new leader. Not basically. He absolutely murders him. He blows him away in a hail of gunfire and a grin on his face.
Uh-oh.
I think I just want to talk through that scene and how, because it's so impactful. It sets up so much of the show.
Yeah, I think it's extremely effective because it serves two very important purposes for the rest of the show. One is that it tells you so much about the character of the Penguin, right? Like we'll learn more about him as a person, like his day-to-day life, who he interacts with, what are the power dynamics involved. But at the end of the day, it's like he has a lot of different dynamics with a lot of different people, just being in the nature of that world, different power players. But the one thing you don't laugh at him, right? Because like you said, he's always looked down upon for a variety of reasons. He's certainly not a made man. He talks about later on in the I think the second episode, he talks about his upbringing and working his way up. But when he's laughed at, he just loses it, and literally just blows the guy away. And that scene also served as the inciting incident for basically the rest of the show, as far as we know it. I'm sure there's other subplots, but that is the main thrust of the show. And to serve both of those purposes within the first scene of the pilot is just perfect. And I think, was that when the title card dropped, or was it? I think maybe it was a little bit later after that. Was it after that?
No, it's right there.
Right when he started laughing,
he realizes what he did. Like he's laughing, and he realizes what he did. And he's like, "Oh, fuck!" And then you get the title.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think after that, really quickly, I don't know if it was maybe an homage to the movie. He dumps the body down the stairs, which I think is kind of similar to when Batman was fighting the goons, and I think he throws one of them down the stairs as well. So, it was just really, really well done, for sure.
Yeah, and I thought, sorry. I mean, what was interesting to me was and kind of what we talked about a little earlier, that some of you guys watched the trailers. I didn't see a thing. I didn't either. I didn't see anything about this, and so coming into it blind, my thought was already, it's like, okay, this story is gonna be on how the Penguin is kind of building up this organization now as his own. And you kind of get that, like, yes, there's that montage. And again, you hear about Alberto Falcone and like, oh, he's the presumed, which that whole thing was weird because you have like the anchors like, oh yeah, inside sources are wondering what's going to happen. I'm like, what? In what
Yeah.
world is that like normal conversation? But okay.
In Gotham.
Apparently in
that's
Gotham,
normal.
it's
Yeah.
totally fine. It's just like, you
Yeah.
know, morning news. But you still get right at the beginning, you know, okay, Penguin's in there. He's going to the safe. He's trying to get all this evidence. And then Alberto comes in and it's like, oh, wait. So no, he's not going to take charge, actually. He's not doing anything here, even though it seems like that's obviously his motive. That's what he wants. And he has to play it cool. And he is playing it cool. And I think seeing him, and we do get more of it later, but what he wants, what he actually wants, it's not just to be like the in charge of the Falcone family mob. He goes into the story about the mobster that was in his town. And that's what really sets everything. And I thought that was really interesting because yes, he is somebody likable. Like it's almost, it's weird, but it's almost admirable what he wants, right? He's looking really for love, like an admiration. He wants to be respected.
Right.
And he shares that with Alberto. And Alberto's like, what the hell are you talking about? Who cares? Like, this is nonsense. Nobody wants that. Like this, he says like, oh, you want me to be some small town, like, you know, mobster? Like, get out of here. And that sets him off. And I think, again, later on, we get a bit more on really why he's the way he is, which I thought was interesting. Because you don't really see it. I don't think you really see it coming when it does show up, but it reinforces his, like, who he is as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really solid point, is that I think at the beginning of that scene, you know, at the beginning of the show, he's much more, I mean, yeah, he's still a bad guy. He's going to do crime. He's going to whatever. Like, that's in his blood. He's going to do that. But like, he does want to be liked and respected. And then it becomes, I will be liked and respected, and I will kill you if you don't respect me. And then it becomes, now I want to be getting into a position of power so that people are forced to respect me. I don't know that that's actually when that switch flips in Oz's head, but that's definitely when we see it, that there was a different motive. It was, you know, he's still a bad guy, but like, he was a good bad guy at the beginning. Locke, thoughts on that scene?
Well, I love how they set it up, how he's really small time at the start of this. Because when we saw the Batman, the movie, and when I went into the show, I was thinking he was gonna be like the big guy already. He was gonna be like the Penguin, but he's not. He's like a small time crook in this one at the start of this one, and in the Batman really too. Even though it isn't really depicted there. But what I love the most is how they immediately establish his whole personality here. We immediately learn in like those first 5 minutes that he's impulsive. He wants to be loved. He doesn't really have a plan going into this. So he just goes with the flow. And he also has a lot of regrets. Like like Justin already said, the minute he impulsively shoots Alberto, he immediately regrets it because that wasn't part of the plan. So I think that's very interesting because then that makes the character more dynamic, I think. Like, it's not a criminal mastermind. He's basically just going with the flow, which makes it very interesting and very unique too. Different than other shows where there's like a bad guy serial killer like Dexter or whatever. So I was so happy with those first 5 minutes because those immediately told me that this was going to be something truly special.
It's funny how much different of a Penguin it is. I mean, obviously, it's been a long time since Adam West's Penguin in the original Batman series, but like, it's no longer like, you know, cigarette holder, top hat, cane, tuxedo. This is like a dude. Like, he's just a guy. He's not some, like you said, he's not some criminal mastermind. I mean, he may be a genius. We'll see. But yeah, he's just a guy who doing what he can to survive and wants to be liked. And who can't relate to that? Who can't relate to killing many people and selling drugs just to be liked? You know, I mean, that's something we all deal with.
Yeah, I think another aspect that stood out, thinking about it and you guys talking about it too, is that part of what he wants to be, and we'll learn more about this later on, especially in the second episode, is he wants to be a provider as well. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
for his mother and for his I guess his second in command, his underling, as well. That's a part of his character.
Victor.
Yeah, Victor. Yeah, yeah. You'll learn more about why. But yeah, that's another aspect of his character that he wants to fulfill. Part of that's clearly part of his vision for his ascendancy is to be a provider. That's why he spoke about the small town organized crime boss as well. There's a sense of safety and security within the community when you have someone like that. You know, a single person that you can go to aside from. I think he spoke to this in the episode. Outside of the corrupt cops, the corrupt institutions, etc., he wants to be that guy that people would go to for their resolutions. So.
Well, mentioning Victor, let's go ahead and get into that.
Yeah.
And I said we weren't going to go scene by scene, but then the next scene, we set up another major character here. He basically, he takes Alberto outside. He throws him down the steps. He gets down to his car, and there's some kids trying to steal the hubcaps. He shoots at them. He chases most of them off. He happens to catch this kid Victor, who quickly becomes his essentially assistant. He's the only one he can catch, so he's the one he takes with him. But then he has him, helping him hide bodies, and later on helping him bury bodies, and forcing him to drive him around. And basically, at the threat of death, turns him into his right-hand man. And I think it's a really interesting point. We could talk about that scene, of course, too. But I think it's like an interesting thing that the Penguin was Carmine's right-hand man for a long time, and he wasn't super respected or anything, but at least he was a businessman, right? But the Penguin doesn't have a right-hand man. He literally he doesn't have anybody else he can talk to or trust right away. He gets a kid who was trying to steal his hubcaps, and I think that's a really cool point. But I want to hear what you guys thought about that scene, but more specifically about Victor as we see him unfold. And of course, you could talk about the whole episode here. Needless to say, if there's a podcast out about an episode, there will be spoilers. So feel free to talk about the whole episode, of
course.
And Victor and how you see that character kind of building in. And I know it's best to like point to somebody and tell them to talk, but I kind of just want to let you guys, if you have something to say it. If you don't, it's fine.
I mean, immediately because they really lingered once he asked for his ID, because that was the thing, right? He interrogates him basically. He's like, what did you think was going to happen here? All that. He takes his ID and he's like, all right, I'm going to keep this. But they like really hold on to it. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? So, and I looked it up, and he's a nobody. Right now, this is a brand new character. So I'm like, okay, clearly he's going to be important. I also did see on IMDb that he was supposed to be in one episode. That's not true, because he's in the second one. So we know that. The IMDb page is incorrect. There's actors that we find later that are not in that IMDb list. So whatever.
They did that on purpose. They did that on purpose to make you guess who what's going to happen.
You think so?
Yeah, because I looked at the second episode too, and there's actors not even in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then there's still whatever. I mean, there's actors who are there for the whole 8 episodes or whatever, but it doesn't matter. But I thought it's interesting where we see Vic, as he calls him. He is a kid who was part of Crown Point, which is one of the places that got really messed up by the flooding that happens at the end of the Batman.
Yeah.
You also see that with the ice house, right? Is that what it's called? The club or ice box or something like that?
Lounge or
ice
palace?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Whatever.
I might be
The
mixing
club.
up my Batman stuff.
Yeah, it's whatever the club is. Like you see it right at the beginning. It's all destroyed and whatever. And he's just this Hispanic kid who seems to have lost everything. He has a stutter when he gets really nervous, which I thought was interesting. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that. We did see a bit more of that in the second episode. I think that's going to play a big part when they figure out that he lies or freaks out or something. But this character seems important. And I think, again, I don't want to get too far ahead, especially with the second episode, because there's some really easy foreshadowing in that second episode where I'm like, this is too easy. They can't be doing this. I don't think that's what's going to happen here. But his journey, and especially through the car drive. I don't want to skip ahead too far here, but I'm assuming
Fine.
this is where we're going. On the car drive, when he's like, all right, you're the driver, basically. Here's the keys. You wanted it. Let's go. Takes him around town to what looks to be like a brothel type thing, to try to get an alibi, and eventually they reached the junkyard, and he's freaking out. And Oz is trying to make small talk with him, which I did think was very Sopranos-like. I did kind of like that. Where he's just like, oh, where do you live? Oh, there. Oh, is that a ice cream shop still on the corner? What's it called? Oh, Hush Puppies or some shit. I forget what it's called. Something like that. And it's like, oh yeah, whatever. I do like that because again, it does show that he's trying to connect in a really psychotic way, but he's trying to make a connection.
Right before he's about to kill him.
Right before he's about to kill him. Exactly. Yes. And I think even us as an audience, we really don't know what he's going to do yet. Like, he's like, is he going to keep him alive? Is he going to kill him? And I don't know if anybody else has anything to say about this part, because then we do get that question answered, obviously, but in a more direct way.
What the car ride? What mostly struck with me there was how he explains to them how he keeps, or maybe that's later, but he tells him anyway. He tells him how he controls people by making them feel big, which I thought was a very important sentence too.
Yeah.
So he basically tells Victor how he should be handled too, which I thought was very interesting. So Vic basically should do the same thing that he's doing to the other mobsters and make them feel big, which is pretty important, I think.
Yeah, I think that, and sorry to cut you off, but I think that happens after that decision. I know.
Yeah.
I think it's like, because then that's when he gets called to
gets summoned,
he gets summoned to the Falcone mansion or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
But again, before that, he takes him to the junkyard. He's going to put the body. That's the very, I guess, Sopranos-like thing of, all right, we're going to hide the body in a car, and it's going to just be there. And there's this decision for Vic, and he's like, all right, get in. I'm going to kill you now because I don't think you're going to make it in this world. So I'm doing you a favor. And Vic has to choose, really. He has a choice, I guess, but not much. Do you want to die or do you want to work for me? And he was able to convince Oz, with not a lot to go off of, that fine, I'll work for you. And from there, we get into what Locke was talking about.
So we get to that next part. We move along. If anybody has anything else to say about Vic,
well, I also thought it was beautiful that he doesn't tell him blatantly get in the car. He tells him, look at the sunrise.
Yeah.
Okay, go take a look. And then, of course, that's why I like this show, because it treats the audience as like adults, because you know what's going to happen. And so does the character. Like, Vic knew immediately what was going to happen. It wasn't like some dumb henchman like in any other movie. So I think it treats the audience and the characters with respect, which is very important, I think.
It felt very of Mice and Men right there.
Yeah.
Look at the sunrise. So Oz gets called to the Falcone mansion, and he's one of their big dealers. He's not only dealing himself, I assume, to some extent, but he's mostly in charge of other people. He's also in charge of production. It seems like, at least of this one plant. And basically, there they tell him, "Hey, we're shutting you down. There's not enough coming through your area. We're switching to a different distributor, cheaper, whatever, elsewhere."
Yeah.
And to our knowledge, at this point, even though Oz is a bit of a he'll kind of go the way the wind blows, it seems like Oz has always been loyal to the Falcones. He says he's always been loyal to them. We don't have any reason to disbelieve him. But at this, wow, I'm choked up already just thinking about the betrayal here. At this point, Oz is just like, they tell him, we're going to shut you down. And he's like, no, you're not. Like, I'm the guy. You can't shut me down. And at this point, that switch, I think, that second switch now, because we went from I want to be the small time guy who helps people when they need it to I want to be the boss, and now we go from I don't want to just be the boss of this organization, I want to kill them all. And I think that kind of kicks in there in his head too. And so they tell him that, as well as this is the first time we meet up with Sophia. Sophia's there. She is the sister of Alberto, of course, the daughter of Carmine, and she immediately starts interrogating him about her brother, about Alberto. She wants to know what happened to him. Has Oz seen him? She knew he was going to meet him, but just talk me through that area there of not only him finding out his plant's going to get shut down, to him switching to hey, there's a whole big new thing coming in that he wasn't supposed to know, into the suspicion. And we can take this, this is going to take a little bit, but just want to walk through that and think through that.
Yeah, first of all, I think it was really well shot to kind of transition between them kind of breaking the news to him and then showing him from the front with the behind view of her coming from out of focus, from behind him into focus, almost like a shark showing up. So that's like kind of analogy I can think of, her coming into frame. And then again, it's very tidy storytelling and character telling. Like all you need to, the one thing that stands out to like anyone who has any knowledge of the universe is like, oh, she just got out of Arkham. You're like, oh, then she's like actually insane. She's a crazy person. Right. So from that moment on, you're like, okay, she could snap at any moment on anyone, right? She could like stab someone in the jugular for looking at her the wrong way. You don't know. So you're like always on edge whenever she's on screen. So between
and to fill in the gaps there, she's, she just got out of Arkham after having murdered essentially in cold blood 7 people at least.
Yeah.
Well, they blatantly call her the Hangman, which is a character.
Right. That is a character in the universe. So this isn't just like somebody who's had some mental difficulties that got some help. This is somebody who cold-blooded killer, and that family is powerful enough that they were able to get her out.
Yeah. But yeah, so as if Colin Farrell wasn't like enough of a screen presence, and you don't really know what. Again, the first scene of this show started with him just gunning someone down impulsively, right? So to add kind of 2 firecrackers to this show is just kicked it up a whole nother level as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, she really is. It's like adding a whole new sort of wild card into the plot and the goings on. So, and it certainly continues into episode 2, where it makes you even more excited for what's going to happen, because not only do you have one person that is really scheming in Oz, you have a whole another one who may or may not. Will their allegiances kind of align? Will they not align? Kind of go back and forth. It makes the show all the more interesting and exciting. So yeah, that's what really stood out to me. And again, this is all still within the first episode, so it kind of tells you how good it was at setting everything up and setting the course of the plot.
Yeah, and I think even it's interesting because you see that he's scared, right? Like the moment she's introduced, he's like, "Oh shit, you're here."
Yeah.
Oh crap! Like how did you get out? And we do get more information later regarding that too, but he was not expecting her to be there. The same way I don't think he expected Alberto to be at the club. Like, so here, Oz is like having all these plans, and it keeps just getting like derailed. And I think that's what also makes this show so good, is that it's like, okay, he has a clear plan. It's like, okay, yeah, we're along for the ride here. This makes sense. And then boom, here's this, a wild card of, who completely derails that plan. And now he has to figure out how is he going to do this. And the fact that she knows, and right off the bat, we know she knows, because she like this actress, her eyes are so good for her role.
Yeah.
It's scary because she has those like serial killer eyes. No offense. I mean, it's like you're playing the character. Yeah. It's great. It's great. Yeah. Like you look at her and you're like, oh, you might kill me at any moment. Like you actually might kill me.
Yeah, she's so innocent too. I think, or the way she looks is so innocent. I should say, which makes it work so well. Because I loved her instantly. like the way she's smart and the way she immediately knows what's going on, like you said, I think that's brilliant. Again, treating the audience with respect and the characters. Like you said, Oz is immediately scared. We immediately are on this road with him where he has to figure out how to lie to her because she's too smart. She immediately figures him out. Um, so I think the way she was introduced was brilliant. It was so much fun too, because this was gonna be the dynamic that the whole show was gonna revolve around. I also want to say like the two other actors in that scene. What was his name? Johnny Vitti, and then his henchman. I want to say it's always nice to see those guys again because that's Doc Stemper from House of Cards, which is always fun. And then the other guy, I kept thinking, where do I know him from? Because I was sure I've seen him before. And then I looked him up on IMDb, and he's one of the Lost Boys from Hook. But he was also in Band of Brothers, which is where most people will probably know him from. But again, great casting for every single actor in this show. They really did a great job there, especially with her, because I've only seen her in How I Met Your Mother. I think she's the mother from How I Met Your Mother. If you've guys seen that show,
Oh, spoilers!
well, I mean, she only shows up in like the
I'm
last
just kidding.
episode or something. But
Yeah.
she's a great actress. I loved her instantly here. The way she looks, the way she talks, the way she she's amazing.
Yeah,
The way she delivers that line of, do you know where my brother is, followed by, Oz just scrambling for an answer, then followed by her again saying, I'm going to ask you again. Her delivery is just perfect. There as well.
Yeah, and the way she immediately goes to his car and notes the bullet hole and asks him why he has a purple car. It's perfect. I love it. Yeah,
it's almost like she's interrogating him. Like she's almost like she's a cop herself. Like she's an investigator. But a couple of points when you guys were talking about her. One is that when you look at her, she does almost look like the typical meek sort of mob boss wife. She looks like she's literally like dragged right from out of the set of The Godfather, right somewhere. Another aspect too is they touched on this in the second episode as well. I think Oz has a little monologue with her after the funeral or memorial service. Is that there's sort of odd kindred spirits in that they're both very looked down upon, or
outsiders.
Outsiders. Looked down upon, passed over, and kind of caught Oz with his condition, her just being a woman. And they reinforce that especially in the second episode with how they're talked to and how they're treated. So there is a sort of understanding that both of them have been able to bond over, especially in the second episode. That's why you're not sure, like, maybe their allegiances will kind of ebb and flow to some degree. Again, which makes the show all that more interesting, which I hope it continues with future episodes.
Moving on from there, we see Oz go to another point of a big motivation that you guys alluded to earlier. He hops on the train, takes it to another location, grabs a different car. And by the way, Vic is with him during this because he's not letting Vic out of the sight at this point because he knows everything that's been happening. But he hops in a car and then goes to some random house. And at this point, we're thinking, like, what's he doing? He shows up at his mom's house, who obviously knows some stuff going on. He even discloses to her that he's the one who killed Alberto. But it's also, I don't know if it's immediately apparent or not in this episode, but it's definitely confirmed in the second episode that she has dementia. So, to some extent, she may remember some of that. To some extent, she may not. You never really know exactly what is getting through to the permanent memory and not. But she goes there, and it's very clear Oz is, very respectful of his mother, but also very protective. He wants to make sure she's set up. He wants to make sure she's protected. He wants to make sure that she approves of him as well. And while there with Victor, she kind of gives him a little talking to that. Why because he's planning at this point, by the way, to run. Sophia knows, even if he convinced her not to kill him on the spot, she knows what he did. And so he's on the run. He's going to make sure his mom's okay. And while there, she, essentially convinces him, you're not running. You should be running this. So I want to hear what you guys thought about the dynamics of, Oz's mother's home and Oz's mother and Victor in these scenes as well. So take it from there, however you like.
Well, I love that she's hidden, first of all.
Yeah.
He's clearly making sure that nobody knows she exists, which is awesome. But the thing that really struck me from the scene were the pictures on the wall. Like
Mhm.
he had a family at one point. He had like an older brother of older brothers, I think
Yeah.
even.
Two
Um,
bro-
s-
Yeah.
so I really wonder if that's going to come back at some point. I'm pretty sure it will. But I have no idea where that's going to go, which is pretty unique to the character. We've never seen that before. I think in the character of the Penguin. Maybe in that bad Gotham show at some point. I've never seen that show, but I don't think we've ever seen an iteration of the Penguin where he has like a family.
Yeah.
So that's very, very interesting to me. And the mom dynamic, of course, that is from The Sopranos. That's like blatantly almost lifted from season 1 of The Sopranos.
A lot of
Except,
mob stuff has
yeah,
that. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course. Except in this case, his mom is very supportive, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And she clearly knows what he's doing, and she clearly knows him as a person, which is pretty interesting. So I thought that was pretty cool. I don't really get why he brought Vic with him to her,
Mm.
because he didn't really have to do that. You're right; he got there to get the money because he's on the run at this point. But I don't really get what the plan was there. Maybe there was no
I think
plan, which makes this more
I
awesome.
I suspect maybe he wanted his mother to approve of him.
Oh, maybe
I think
yeah.
so. It's like, oh, are you approving of what I'm doing? Adding this person to within my inner circle, so to speak.
Sure,
But
yeah.
yeah, I have a lot to say about the scene. Justin, did you want to say anything before I yap on endlessly?
Yeah, because it's interesting that Locke, you said that his mother respects him. I think it is the complete opposite. I immediately, well, at first you do get that, like, oh, yeah, he's taking care of her. Yeah, something, she seems like she's dealing with something, whether it's dementia or not, we don't really know yet. We really do get that in the second episode. But clearly, like, she's having a little bit of memory loss. But it's just like, she's just older, whatever. And at first, right, when he is thinking about running, when he is, it's almost like, wait a minute. Like she almost, it seemed like she was on board with it for a second, and then things took a 180. And she's like, what are you talking about? You're not running. My son is not running from anything. And what I took a lot from that conversation, and then again, we get a little bit more in the second episode too. And I don't know if this is going to be the case, but I'm right now thinking that he's into everything right now because she put him in that position. She is almost is trying to live vicariously through him. Because I mean, she says it, it's like, I don't remember if that was in the second episode or the first one, where it's like, I can't be like, oh, it is in the second one. So we'll save that. But you get this sense that she cares about what people think of her. She doesn't necessarily care about what they think of him. It's how people think of him that then reflects on her.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, okay. So again, we get a little bit of a deeper layer. It's like, why did he respect the mob boss from his small town? Did his mother respect him? Is that what happened here? Is that why, like, all this is that like the father figure for him, that type of thing? And this is getting very psychological, but I think we're going to see a lot of that as the series progresses. And so I thought that was a very interesting point, because we are seeing that Oz isn't just this like obvious bad guy. He has these different layers, and it's again, okay, yeah, he wants to be loved, respected, all these things, but now you see a deeper level. It's like, is he looking for his mother's approval? Is that what's happening exactly? We don't really know. It seems like it, because he's very sheepish with her, as opposed to how you see with everybody else, besides the bosses. But with her, he's very like, oh, you're right, Ma. Like, I guess I should go and do that. Yep, I'm gonna go. So I thought that was a really interesting point to see in this first episode.
Well, there is, if we can hop to the second episode really quick. There's one sentence in the second episode that makes me think, because he tells people that she's dead,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
which doesn't make me think that she was an important figure at some point in like the whole world, because then they would know that she isn't dead. Because because I don't know. I don't know how that's gonna fit in, but that's a really interesting take. Yeah.
Yeah. It almost seemed like he was doing that to protect her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like you said,
Yeah.
if she had been somebody important, they would know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
she
think-
would. She would be leverage against him, which is why
Right.
I think when he first sort of corrals Victor and he looks at his ID and he stares at it, that was to remember his address. That way, like if anything knows, he knows. Like
Yeah.
there's some sort of address
Yeah.
where if it's not Victor, it's someone close to him. I can get at them too. So
Interesting. I didn't think
yeah,
about that.
but this is probably my favorite scene of both episodes so far because again, it said so much about his character and it did something that I kind of didn't expect. I think you guys kind of spoke to this. I admittedly haven't watched The Sopranos. I'm like notoriously bad with TV. That's one of the series that on my top priorities to get to eventually. But like you guys mentioned it, he takes a train, takes a separate car to go visit his mother. And I'm thinking, like, okay, this is going to be like his grounding, his sort of piece of decency in his life that keeps him grounded and focused and everything. But no, she's almost like a Lady Macbeth, honestly. She's like, no, you're going to go do all this stuff. You are going to have aspirations.
Yeah.
You're going to have power. And I was like, okay, wow, we're doing like something that kind of like we're kind of doing against tropes here. So that was like really, really interesting for me to find out. And then we kind of learn later on in the second episode, there is a lot of guilt between the both of them because he's the only surviving child. So when you learn that, you understand why she's worried about her legacy. He's worried about being the only one left for his mother. That's again, it taps into his real instincts to be a provider. He doesn't want to be seen as a failure to his mother. You know, that's ultimately what at the core of his character is about, amongst maybe a couple other things. But yeah, that's what really stuck out to me is you learn that's kind of at the core of who he is, you know, and what drives him. And yeah, I don't know if she's worried about social status. She's worried about her legacy, right? Like all her kids except for one is dead. Like what is going to be left of her after her, right? Who is going to carry on? What are they going to make of themselves? And he is kind of, as far as we know, he's kind of all that she has left. Like there really isn't anyone else. You know, we learn in the second episode, the landlord neighbor or whatever had to help her home. There really is no one else around as far as we know. So it's kind of in a weird way, all they really have is each other, you know, in some respect. They're kind of in this together in a weird way. But yeah, that was just a really, really interesting scene for me that's built upon even more so in the second episode where she says something to the effect of like, what is my legacy going to be? You know, it's all on Oz, you know, not just his own fate, but her kind of what her sort of legacy is going to be. So that's added pressure on his shoulders, aside from his normal insecurity of people looking down on him or dismissing him or whatever. So yeah, that was just again probably my favorite scene of both episodes so far. Just how much it surprised me and how well it was done.
So going from Mom's house,
What do you think?
What did I think?
Yeah,
you keep asking me that. I don't know. I feel like I feel like by the time I'm the fourth person that's like you guys have said everything there's to say.
Well, you go first now for the next.
No, that's okay. I kind of do go first when I set it up. You know, we'll get the hang of this with the four of us here.
Oh yeah.
No, I agree with almost everything you guys. I think everything you guys said. I thought that. I did think originally, like, I of course you don't know where he's going, but when he gets there, you're like, oh, he's just there to take care of his mom. She doesn't know anything about this, and then immediately he's like, I killed him, and she's like, you idiot, like kind of thing. And I very much thought like, oh, this is going to be where he kind of sees the error of his ways, and then she's like, you got to go out there and get yours, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is a different type of motivator as well, and it makes it interesting. What I thought at this point, and we don't see this until what I was alluding to. In the next scene, but I thought at this point, like, okay, if Vic is going with him and he's going to see where his mother is, he's definitely either going to die or become like a hardcore buddy, like he's going to be the right hand man at this point. And of course, they do go back to the headquarters and they have that discussion where Oz basically says, no, nobody's going to give anything to us. We got to fight for it, and he's as much being a mentor as he is a menace to Vic, because, you know, Vic could have gotten shot at when he was trying to steal the hubcaps off that car and realized this, I can't live like this, and turned his life around, and been a different citizen, different type of person. And he seems like a mid-teen, something like that. Not certainly not an adult, but not a kid. And this is like the defining the moment in his life where it's like, okay, well, now he's just a bad guy. Like he's just in with the scum of the earth in this scenario. So they go back and they have that little discussion, and then the next big piece that sets up a major plot moving forward. They go to Blackgate Penitentiary, and they meet up with Salvatore Moroni, and this is really where Oz starts playing the double agent. Essentially, he goes there to talk to Salvatore and tell him, like, look, they got this, the Falcone's got this big delivery coming in. It's going to change everything up, and I'm good with them. I can help you get on the inside, and here's who's still alive and who's dead, and all that kind of stuff. And Salvatore is essentially like, I don't care. You are just a small time crook. Essentially, he doesn't say it in so many words, but that's what's conveyed. And then Oz is like, okay, fine, whatever, I'll leave. And then he turns around and hands him his own old ring, Salvatore's old ring that Carmine Falcone had been wearing for years. And at that point, I think that Salvatore really realizes, like, oh, he's in a position where he was able to procure this one way or another. And he asks a couple times, where did you get this? And at that point, you see that switch flip. Again, I'm talking about another switch flipping moment in Salvatore's mind, where he's like, I thought not a lot of this guy. Now I think he's a little more than meets the eye. And he doesn't want anything to do with him still, but at the same time, he's gonna wear his own ring and take the badge of being in charge of or the leader of whoever killed Alberto. And of course, you wear that ring around prison. You wear it around the penitentiary. No doubt that word's getting out almost immediately and back to the family. And of course, it does very quickly. But what did you guys think of Salvatore Moroni, in short, and then also, Oz's big plan here to be able to backstab the group he's been loyal to for so many years?
Well, it treats the audience with respect because Moroni doesn't trust him. He knows he's a stupid liar. Like, he knows he's a backstabber. He calls him that too. But I think when he tosses him the ring, he realizes, like, oh, okay, he's maybe a backstabber, he's a liar, but he can get things done. So maybe I can use him somehow. So I think that's very important that every character in this show knows who Oswald is or knows what he can do. That makes it way more interesting than just having this genius mastermind planning the whole thing, and we get to watch him do it as the audience. No, it's so interesting because everybody knows who this guy is. He's like an asshole, he's like a douchebag, a backstabber, a liar. And it's also great that Moroni is played by Clancy Brown, who's a fantastic actor always in everything he's in. So I thought that scene was great. I do find it a little bit weird, or I did find it a little bit weird that he takes the ring and immediately wears it, because that is the plan. That is Oz's plan, and he knows that's the plan. I mean, clearly. So why did he go along with that? Maybe it's because it's too emotional. It's his ring. He's been in
it's
there
a pride
for
thing,
years.
I think.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, and you guys, I think he talks about it earlier in the episode. I think he maybe was talking to Victor, and he was talking about the best way to get in with people is to play up to their ego. Talk them up.
Yes.
Talk big about them. So that was definitely what he was doing there, and it worked, right? Like, he's Salvatore Moroni is the one of the crime bosses in Gotham, and since he is currently imprisoned, he is even more desperate for a sense of status, right, and respect, and you need that even more so in prison. That you are definitely not someone to be messed with. So yeah, that's what really stuck out to me with that scene. And yeah, he's clearly, I think, Ben, you mentioned that he was backstabbing them. I think in a way he's kind of reciprocating, because from his perspective, they turned their backs on him after all the loyal service he's provided. Like, oh yeah, we're just shutting you down. So they basically made him even more desperate. Like, what is he supposed to do now in this world? And he, the scene before, he told Victor, like, we need to fight to get what we're getting. So, and this is how he's going about it. If they hadn't if they hadn't shut him down, maybe he wouldn't have gone to the prison and started concocting and scheming to get the two biggest crime families pitted against each other. But
Right.
yeah.
Any other thoughts on the introduction here of Maroni? Okay. So this next part I'm a little confused on, and I did watch this episode, a week ago. We're recording right now directly after the second episode. So it's been a little while since I watched the first episode. Oz heads back to his place, and Sophia and the other people in the Falcone family they're there waiting for him, right? Like
Yeah.
they're ready to take him out. A car chase commences, and at this point, Oswald has already talked to Victor and given him some instructions that we don't know about. He sent him away and told him, something to do. Of course, that's quickly revealed. And essentially, there's a car chase, and they track down Oswald or Oz, and they kidnap him. They tie him up. They strip him naked. And I want to talk first, also about the makeup and prosthetics department here
Holy
too.
shit. Yeah.
But they strip him down. They tie him up. They take a rope and dig it into his skin, which is, even though I know it's fake, it's just gnarly to watch, which is pretty cool. And we won't get into what happens after they've been investigating him here, but I just want to talk about this, the fact that he already knew he was screwed, and he was already trying to set up a plan for himself 3 steps ahead of where everybody else was. And that, I said earlier about maybe he's a genius, and I think this is part of that. Like, he knows this world so well in and out that he already knows what they're going to do and what's going to happen before it happens to him. Not that it's that, it's not that hard to figure out, but the plans he sets in motion as a character are really interesting to me. Really, I think indicative of his intelligence for sure.
Yeah, I think it's funny because Locke had been talking about like how the show up until this point, I think, has treated the audience as adults, right? Like, it's like, all right, we're going to cut the BS. Here's what's going on. This is one of those moments where it is a surprise to the audience. You don't expect that to go exactly the way it did. You figure something's going to happen. Like, this isn't going to be the end, obviously, but how is he going to get out of this? And the way he gets out of it is what was unexpected. And you get that same thing in the second episode too, where it's like, wow, you guys are leading us down a path where, yes, you're not going to fall into all these easy tropes where it's just like, okay, obviously this is what's going to happen next. And then this, you get these very unexpected reveals. That is what makes the show so fun to watch. And it is, what's also great about it is that it is happening at the end. So it does keep you engaged, wanting that next episode, seeing what happens next. And I think that was done phenomenally.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit meta because all the other characters in the organized crime family, they all consistently underestimate Oz, right?
Yeah.
So I think in a way it's kind of doing a meta commentary to the audience. Like, yeah, you guys didn't expect that, did you? Because you underestimated him, right? Like, what is he going to cook up next? Well, like, what scheme is he going to come up with to get out of it? And I think, I forget which one of you, maybe it was Justin that mentioned it earlier, is like a common refrain in the show is that there's always a wrench thrown in his plans, right? And he always has to think quick on his feet, which speak to how quickly his mind works. And I think in a series that's not a series, but in a universe that's spearheaded by Batman, that's kind of a good thing to have, right? It kind of echoes how Batman would operate, right? As a hero, like he's always thinking on his feet. He always has plan B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z mapped out in his head on what to do. So in a way, we're kind of seeing how a villain version of Batman would operate and work his way up, theoretically. So that is one thing I thought of when I was like, oh, how is he going to constantly get out of this? It's kind of similar to Batman. We're getting sort of origin story of a villain, so to speak. So yeah, that was very, and it was done in a very entertaining way as well. It all kind of looped back together. He was able to get out of that jam, and he was also simultaneously able to reinforce the pinning of the murder on someone else. So yeah, I got like it's kind of like almost like a bunch of different plot spider webs kind of intersected and came together. So it was very very entertaining and very smart, for sure.
I also like that it wasn't it didn't go off the way he intended it, because he only wanted the head in there and only wanted the pinky, right? That was his
Yeah.
plan. Only the head and the
Yeah.
pinky in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So
Vic couldn't do
yeah.
it. Yeah.
all right, and I'm hoping people who are listening or watching already know this, but yeah, that's the thing that happens is while he's being interrogated, while they're essentially torturing him, Vic comes through and slams a car into outside of the building where they have Oz held, and they go out while he's still tied up, mind you. They open up the trunk. They see Alberto inside. The roof is painted with payback. They've cut off the finger, or I assume Vic cut off the finger that the
Yeah.
ring was on. It basically is just saying like, oh look, it's very obvious here. Anyone who is not a prophet or a witch thinks this is the Maronis. Maroni did this because that's what he wanted them to think, and I thought that was I thought it was cool. Like it's very, this is a very movie thing. This stuff, people don't really get pinned like this. People don't really get tricked like this in real life, I don't think very much. But like this is a perfect mafia mob scenario where like this one guy with the help of some kid he just met is a mastermind 3 steps ahead of everything. And it paints Oz in that portrait of genius.
Well, it's also because of the kid, because he
Yeah.
normally, especially in this show, it's clear that he doesn't normally have like a henchman or assistants.
He
So
is the
when
henchman normally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So now that because none of these people have ever seen Vic. They've
Right.
seen him drive, of course, but they've never talked to him. So they don't know that. That's why it's so genius, because he's tied down to that chair. So he couldn't have done this, which is what makes it so great of him, so smart of him.
Yeah, and it did lead to at least for me, it led to a pretty genuine, humorous moment when he was just casually talking about how he was supposed to mutilate the body. And Vic was just like, he was like, oh, I forget his exact explanation, but he basically couldn't go through with it, right? So there's definitely no
it's
nurture.
Harder cutting off a head than you think.
Yeah, there's definitely no nurture going on. It's all nature from Oz. Yeah, it was that was funny. Yeah, it's again there. It's another great aspect of the show is they're balancing the tone so very well. In addition to keeping the pacing going, like it's never really super over the top, like dramatic. There are these like little tinge moments because again, it's at the end of the day, it's in Colin Farrell in like 50 pounds of prosthetics and like makeup and stuff, right? So he's clearly having a grand old time portraying this character, and there has to be a little tinge of a little bit over the topness to kind of reflect the over the top portrayal of his character. So
yeah, and before we move on to the second episode, I want to say just that. Well, I mean, we mentioned the prosthetics and everything, and when I first saw the casting for the Batman, not for the Batman, I think Robert Pattinson was amazing, by the way. But when I first saw the casting for Penguin, I was like, really? Do we need that guy? Like, do we really need Colin Farrell? He doesn't look like.
Yeah.
And then the first image they showed of him, which I did see before I actually saw the movie, I was like, oh my God.
You would never know. And the thing,
yeah,
like I said, Colin Farrell is like, I think you genuinely believe he's one of our great actors of our time. I mean, he would have made a killer Harvey Dent Two-Face. I think he could have even been Bruce Wayne Batman too. Honestly, there's so many characters in the universe I think he could have portrayed because of how good of an actor he is. But yeah, when you saw that, like we saw that first, I mean, Ben, you follow comic book stuff kind of like I do. When you saw that first image, I'm like, whoa! And you would never know. Like, I'm sorry, like if you didn't know it was Colin Farrell in the movie, you would like probably never be able to guess. It's just unrecognizable. Yeah, it's just so. It is kind of watching a lot of movies and knowing Colin Farrell as an actor. It does add more genuine enjoyment for the show, for sure.
Yeah.
And to be able to play a role so well when you're so far outside of your own body.
Yeah.
I mean, he's technically inside of his own body, but to be, he's not only having to think about how he should move and act and everything in the role, but he's also having to think about it. How does this look when I have all this stuff on me? And I don't even know how many hours it takes them to put all those prosthetics and that makeup on and everything, but it's got to be extensive. So to be able to manipulate that in such a way that it makes that character come to life, because he's essentially just wearing, I mean, he's not just wearing a costume, he's wearing a suit. You know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's wearing an outfit that's another person's body on top of him.
yeah. It makes
which is
you.
impressive.
It really makes me believe that he's fully committed, because for someone to go through all that, but again, how many countless of hours, and not only that, that one single shot of like his gnarly mangled foot, and like just for that one shot, like how long did that, prosthetics and effects take it? Like, man, they're fully committing to it. And in fact, I think Colin Farrell is an executive producer or producer, so he's like literally invested in this as well, not just in terms of his time and acting ability, but he has some say in the production, some sort of
Financial
investment.
stake too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, he's full on committed for this, which again adds a great deal of credibility to the show for me.
Yeah. Normally, this is where we would end the show. Maybe a little wrap up thoughts, but because we're also covering episode 2 here, let's go ahead and talk about it. This episode is called, I don't have the name of it.
Inside Man.
Inside Man. There we go. Maybe a little on the nose, but it definitely gets to the point of the episode. And we start out this episode with Sophia. She's, we don't know at the time, but she's having like a nightmare or a vision, dreaming about, experiencing in her mind Alberto's death in a different way than it really happened. But she wakes up and she's in an office of someone who is clearly a therapist, psychiatrist, whatever exact definition. I'm pretty sure it's one of the, it's somebody from Arkham who's there to help her through things. I assume maybe part of court mandated counseling after the fact. And he comforts her and tells her, you basically gotta move on. But I want to talk about this character really quick, because we only see him. We only know that his name is Julian Rush because he says, "Can you see the things on the desk?" And he's just trying to center her, but really that's just a plot device to get us to know his name. There's no other reason we needed to know this guy's name if he doesn't come back in a bigger way in some way in the future. But just briefly, this scene setting up this episode of her, not only trauma. You're gonna have trauma if your brother is murdered, but you're definitely gonna have trauma if you're a crazy person, which she very clearly is, and I mean that in the most appropriate way possible. She's insane. What do you guys think of this scene in the doctor's office?
Yeah, I think my one, maybe neither of one of you had this impression. Did it seem like he was maybe trying to get romantic with her?
Yeah, I felt
It
like
is.
there
I
was
thought
some
he had his
type of
hand on her
relationship.
chest.
Okay, I was just
Yeah.
like, okay, it's getting
Yeah.
they're lingering for a very long time. Okay, I wasn't misreading it then. Yeah. That's the take I got. I think one sort of little cute, sort of rhyming poetry thing is both episodes start with the character kind of on a couch, right? It starts with like the penguin was on the couch in the first scene, and she's on the couch. She's on a couch in the first scene of this movie. I don't know if that was intended by them. A cute little, like, again, it's like a George Lucas thing.
We'll find out in episode.
It's like
3.
poetry. Yeah, if another character ends up on the couch, it starts on the couch. I'm like, okay, they're doing a little poetry rhyming thing. But no, yeah, it was good. It's like you learn, and again, both episodes start with learning a decent amount in such a small period of time about both. I guess you can call her the like primary antagonist. I don't know. Like, again, it's hard to classify them as protagonist and antagonist because it's makes it so dynamic and interesting. But yeah, those are kind of like my two observations of that scene.
But I just kept thinking throughout, who is this guy? Because I know the actor is in a couple of things, Theo Rossi.
Yeah.
So I know he's going to be important. He's going to be back, and I want to know who he is, who he plays. It's clearly something important. So it's clearly something that's going to come back later on. So I was mostly fixated on him and trying to figure out who he could be in the Batman universe. And I think you had an interesting theory about that, Ben.
Yeah. The only real character that seems to fit for me, if it is an allusion to the character in the comics or in the world in general, is Hugo Strange, who I'm actually having a hard time remembering all the things about Hugo Strange.
Maybe he could be.
It's the only reason I could think.
He could be Scarecrow. Could he? Possibly.
Yeah, they could definitely get into that.
Possibly.
Yeah. Which wasn't Hugo Strange in the source material, but
no, I say
they're doing all sorts of
he
stuff,
could be either one of them, I think.
Yeah. Cool. So next we see Oz outside of Blackgate getting ready to go in and talk to Maroni again. And I think the really interesting thing to me here is he's pounding a bottle of Pepto-Bismol right off the rip. And it's like, okay, this guy, he's the criminal mastermind here. He's got balls, but like he's still scared out of his mind. He's still got something eating away at his gut. With just a little quick blurb there that I thought was interesting. And he goes in, talks to Salvatore. His wife, Salvatore's wife, is there. Nadia, the underboss, essentially is there. And honestly, Salvatore's like not real happy about the fact that he's the one getting blamed for Alberto's death, even though, it was his decision to wear the ring, his decision to take it. It's really interesting that the guards at Blackgate let him keep it because, usually there's like a rule about that in penitentiaries, but that would destroy the whole plot of the show. But essentially Oz goes in and gives him another plot or another plan, builds on the plan they had a little bit already. And Oz is going to act as the episode title, Inside Man, and help the Maronis rip the drops off of the Falcones, who are still maybe a little suspicious of Oz, but overall clueless because as this drop goes down, they tell him, you got to ride in the vehicle with it. That way, if something happens and it's your fault, you're going down for it too. But I've talked through a couple scenes here, so why don't you guys, anything there that stood out to you that was interesting that you want to dive into?
Well, really short. Again, his plan doesn't go as planned, which is so awesome. Once again, it goes wrong, and once again, he has to like bumble his way through it, almost literally here. So I thought that was great, but that's all I got here.
Yeah. Anything else?
I mean,
Okay.
I thought how he handled it was done like well. He's almost like an improv artist. Like he's able to like handle it, right? Like he took advantage. He knew, since he knew the plan, he spotted the car and he's like waiting for his moment. And because the driver was trying to make a stupid joke, he's like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do. And I guess in that way, he did literally do improv comedy and try to position himself where he's less likely to get shot when the drive-by happens. And he played through that whole scene really well. I mean, the driver is presumed dead. He takes out the guards in the truck. Door opens up. There's the henchman from the Maroni crime family. Driver's not dead. Both get shot, which comes as a plot device later. And he's able to save, after all that, almost everybody's dead, and he's able to save Sophia's bodyguard, the guy who ended up kidnapping him in the first episode. So he's building that trust because he almost had the opportunity to just take him out, and he decided not to because he realized he's better. It's better if I keep him alive because now this is an alibi.
Wait, he also told him earlier we're all on the same side. That's the guy he told that to, right? Which was already a little bit like, oh, you're gonna do something bad to this guy at some point.
Yeah, one thing I thought was interesting is when is it Johnny Vitti? Is he the one?
Doug Stamper.
Yeah, Doug Stamper. Thank you. Yeah, that's how I know him. When he shows up at the warehouse with he recalls him Penguin. Like,
I was going to bring that up.
He
next.
exclaims it like that was like max to begin the embarrassment of him, right? Because as soon as he calls him Penguin, he's like, you spoke to derailing his plans. It's like, no, you're going to go in this truck. This is your job. You're going to go in this truck. Like where the most of the heat is going to be, where all the product is. So it made me think like, oh, he's going to be the one. When it came time to, I guess we're kind of skipping ahead later on in the episode, but when it came time to frame someone with the knife, you're like, oh, he's going to frame Beatty because he shows up to him. When they're lining everyone up, he's like, oh, what the F are you looking at? Like, okay, he's going to stick the knife on him. I got this figured out, right? But then it doesn't transpire that way. It transpires with the bodyguard guy. You're like, oh, okay. That's one thing. Okay, so it sounds like we're all on the same page with that as well. It's like, okay. So they're doing these little twists on things that you expect in subtle ways that are effective.
I think it's pretty clear from that moment. We haven't heard him in the show referred to as Penguin yet, but
No.
like he's obviously got something going on with his feet or legs. They show the brace on his shoe in the one shot pretty extensively. He waddles. He worked at the Ice Lounge, whatever it was called. I think Iceberg Lounge. I think that was.
I think it's in the
or Suicide Squad. But
yeah.
whatever.
I think it's in the universe too. Iceberg Lounge is a canonical.
It's in the yeah. Right, but regardless, like there's a lot of illusions. But by the look on Oz's face when he calls him Penguin, it's very clear that Oz does not like that.
Yeah, great.
And he has been called that before.
Oh yeah.
And that if we know that, there's almost a certainty that V knew that, and it was definitely meant as a dig.
Oh.
It was not just like a on the spot. I thought of this kind of thing. That's a setup.
I think that entire scene was he was showing up not to just take charge and take control, but to embarrass him. Like from step one, like I'm going to call you Penguin, and I'm going to order you in front of everyone. I'm going to order you to do what I want you to do. So, yeah, it was definitely some browbeating and humiliation, and embarrassment. But even though he didn't frame him, you have to think like VD is like a marked man from here on out. Like he is in Oz's gun sights to be taken out somehow eventually.
I guess I'm jumping to the very end, but he was going to frame, but he couldn't do it anymore. Because of the jewels, because Vic couldn't. Vic couldn't.
Yeah. So it doesn't go exactly to plan, but the overall plan still works out. Oz gets away with the Falcones. They kind of save his butt there by giving him a ride out of the place. And then the Maroni guys crash the transport. Oz is having to not only shoot his way out, but also talk his way out at the same time. This is the part where I thought the editing could have been a little better, but I'm just nitpicking here. It was still great sequence.
You're right.
But it just seemed a little bit sloppy to me. I'm going to comment on the show's plot as well as the actual artistry of it. And hey, maybe I'm being nitpicky and a little hoity-toity, but I'm not saying I could have done better. I'm just saying they could have. They go back to the Falcones to meet up, debrief, talk about it, and there's a little bit of casting the blame already on VD and on his decision for the route for everything, and VD's argumentative right off the rip. So we see this tension already building there, and of course we're subverting expectations here for the future, but that's where Sophia enters back in, and she comes in and tries to essentially take her place as I'm gonna push my agenda. I'm gonna make some decisions here. And at that point, I can't remember his name. Luca, who's Carmine's brother, who is, now that Alberto is out of the way, Luca is essentially the de facto leader. There's obviously a bit of a struggle on should it be Alberto? Should it be Luca? Should it be Sophia? But Alberto's got the respect. He's got the reins. He's not just been in Arkham or a serial killer that we know of. And so he comes in and basically shuts everybody down, tells them all to stop arguing, to get out. He especially tells Oz to get out, and then tells Sophia, you need to just go away. And I think this is, this is really important to Sophia's motivation and her character, in my opinion. She's already got the underdog complex, or not underdog, but kind of cast aside complex. But then on top of that, she's actually being told, like, I know you were Carmine's daughter and you're Alberto's sister, and theoretically, you're the next in line, but we don't need you. Go away. And she doesn't like that, needless to say. And I have a feeling that later on, Luca's going to pay the penalty for the way he treats her here. But we don't see that yet, of course. Oswald catches Sophia's ear, tells her it should be you, and she dismisses him. Thoughts on that sequence there as well? I thought the boardroom sequence was really cool, just the banter. Doug Stamper being in the room, and the obvious tension there between, does Luca let them all keep bantering and talking back and forth, or does he shut them down? Is that a weak thing for Luca to do, to not let something erupt, or was that the strong thing? And then the way he treats Sophia, moving into the motivation on how Oz treats Sophia and caters to make her feel strong, make her feel big. You guys have any thoughts there?
This is the part where he tells her his mother died, that his mom is dead, right?
No, that was
No.
after the funeral.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll keep it for then.
Yeah.
Then no.
Yeah, I
Then
think
no.
it was.
Okay. All
I
right.
think it was. It was an effective scene because it was kind of served two dual purposes. One of it was
Mhm.
to kind of, again, I think you mentioned it just a moment ago, Ben, was to kind of build her up.
Mhm.
But it was also to kind of open himself up in a weird way. Like we're obviously not sure how sincere he is or not, but it's obvious that he sees an opportunity with what just transpired. And it was kind of similar to when they told Oz, like, hey, we're shutting you down, right? That's kind of,
Mhm.
for all intents and purposes, what they did with, God, I drew a mind brain fart on her name, Sophia, right? They basically just kind of shut her down in a way, right? She came up and she's like, hey, I have all these plans and ideas. And they're like, yeah, that's cute. No, we don't care. Just get out of here. Um, so he sees an opportunity there that he can exploit. While at the same time, there's obvious, like I said, there's sort of a kindred spirit to both of them, and she recognizes that as well. That's why it's not just a simple protagonist antagonist relationship, as far as I'm concerned. It's very very interesting and dynamic. Um, and there were two of those scenes, right? There was one just after the little confrontation in the boardroom or whatever. Then there's the one after the memorial service as well. And the entire time she kind of like from that first scene when she shows up, she kind of knows not to really trust him, but at the same time, she's like,
Yes.
there's obviously similarities between us, and whether we kind of have some temporary aligned objectives, right? It's kind of like a enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of situation. So, yeah, it's. I'm hoping that the two of them is kind of be like the core dynamic that serves as kind of like the main thrust of the season, and I suspect it is. Because every interaction between the two of them is really interesting and fascinating because you don't know where their allegiances truly lie in that moment, or even kind of what their plans are later on in the episodes and season.
Well, that's the beauty of this show,
Yeah.
right? Like I think you can assume that he survives, but everybody else
Yeah.
can go, which is what
Yeah,
makes it
I
so
was thinking, I
interesting.
was kind of joking. Victor is his assistant, right? That's his name. Yeah, I think I was joking that
Yeah,
Victor either dies in the show or he appears in Batman too. So it's like
yeah,
either way.
Mhm.
So
yeah.
He becomes Robin.
yeah, he becomes like a little penguin Robin. Can you imagine? Yeah, that'd be funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
I almost think he has to die because there's going to be no room for him in the Batman 2. I think
Yeah.
it's too small of a character
Mhm.
to have in
Yeah,
there. So I
unless
think
they have him maybe show up in one scene as a cameo as like kind of service to people who, yeah, but
maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
possible. Yeah,
He's definitely just a plot device for the Penguin, in my opinion, which is okay. You need that.
yeah,
Yeah.
So at the end of the scene, Sophia basically tells Oz, screw off. I don't need you. I'm not interested. I know what you're doing,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then he ends that conversation with saying, essentially apologizing for something to do with her being at Arkham. Did I miss what happened? Did I miss this scenario? Like what happened?
So
Because all I know is that he apologized for his role in that.
yeah, so I was thinking about that too. They don't explicitly say, I don't think, but it sounds like he was the one who basically told Carmine, I guess, what she did, which is also why I'm kind of curious about how crazy she actually is. Because then we
Mhm.
get later on in the show, um, during the funeral or during the wake,
Memorial. Yeah,
and everybody's talking to you, hear the whispers, you hear all these different things.
Mhm.
yeah.
And she is not okay with it. And
Yeah.
it's almost like I feel like a serial killer wouldn't feel this way. At least the way that
Mm.
it looks like she's feeling, which is like none of these things are true.
Yeah.
And she plays into it. Like when she's like, oh, she's crazy, whatever. And she grabs the food. I know we're skipping ahead, but she grabs the food and like eats it with her hands and then puts it back.
Yeah.
I feel like there must be more because the fact that, yes, he apologizes for that and we see a little bit more of that too. I think as the series goes on, we're going to get, perhaps it's not all true that she's
Mhm.
maybe that she killed 7 people, as we find out later. Supposedly she killed 7 people, and maybe even more.
Well, one thing I thought, and I actually thought this during the scene where she's going crazy with the food and eating the noodles with her hands and everything, is I thought, what if this isn't actually happening? You know, sometimes they'll have like a scene where somebody is imagining everyone talking about them, and in reality, nobody's even paying attention to them. I thought about that as well, and it's interesting that you bring that up of how crazy is she actually, because what if she's not? What if she's imagining all of the conversations around her? There's obviously discussion about her being, you know, insane and a murderer and everything like that, but is she imagining all those conversations happening around her? I have no reason to think that, other than I just thought that would be cool if that was what was happening here.
Well, you can kind of see it with the little kid, right? With the little girl.
Yeah, that's true.
The way the mom reacts makes me think that it is real.
Yeah.
Because they're all, the way she reacts to her is like not very normal. Like she's clearly scared of her.
Yeah, that entire scene was like a tacit threat of sorts, right? Just like, and her like kind of imposing herself, and the mom was going to fix her hair. She's like, no, I got it. It's like, oh, okay.
Right.
You know?
But it only happened after her mom got defensive. That was the thing. Because at first they were cousins. She's like, oh, whatever, like just casual conversation. And then as soon as she addressed her daughter, that's when she got defensive. And she was kind of like, oh, you're full of it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lean into this now. And she really does. She really leans into like, should keep her safe. Never know. That type of thing. So that's why I'm not sure. Because again, like,
is she really that way, or is she playing into it?
Correct. Yeah. Like, is she playing into this character that she was framed for, perhaps? And I think that might end up being what it is. I'm taking a guess now that I'm saying it. I think it might even be that Alberto killed people and she took the fall.
Well, the character, the Hangman in the Batman comics is, I think, unless I'm mistaken, you guys can correct me. Isn't she the one that kills like police officers connected to Harvey Dent or something? Because I
don't remember.
In the comics, she really is a serial killer. And also the people outside of the memorial or the funeral are protesting her because she got out.
Yeah.
Which is also something she could imagine, of course, but that seems like a harder thing to do, to have so many people with like.
Well, I think it could be the false perception, you know, whatever the narrative is around her. There's obviously like means of propaganda. Yeah, they don't know any better.
Yeah.
But
although in the Batman universe with Arkham involved and everything, she's probably a serial killer. Let's be honest. Like that's just
she's
the
also
most likely
crazy.
scenario.
Right. I feel like if she wasn't a serial killer, she wouldn't be. First of all, she wouldn't be as crazy. Why would people be so?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Again, she could have. Maybe she killed one person out of a fit of anger, or maybe in self-defense or something, and it turned into like, oh, it's just pinned a bunch of more bodies on her. But I want to learn more. Like I want to learn more about her and the Penguin as well, which again speaks to the quality of the show and the writing and the characters and how they're portrayed so effectively.
In the first episode, we see her kill the other kid too.
Yeah.
So that makes me think like she is. I mean, she's not. There's something clearly wrong with her. Like she's clearly a killer.
Well, and she says, "It's like, is this what you wanted me to do? Like, it's like this is what you're expecting me to do, right?
Yeah.
Is to just kill them."
Yeah.
So that's true too.
And she got genuinely upset when the brother was the one who killed the bodyguard. She's like, yeah, she wanted to do it. Yeah. So, yeah, not quite sure.
But
maybe they had a
relationship
before, and it was just a simple thing of like she felt betrayed by him, even if she did kill all those people. But again, I want to find out more of what happened. Maybe, hopefully, we do. But we'll see throughout the rest of the season.
So moving on from here, Sophia decides she needs to act independently of the rest of the family, get out from under the thumb of Luca a little bit. She goes out to hire Detective Wise, I think was his name. And he had been, somebody who was loyal to her father. He isn't interested. He's like, I'm out of this life. But she offers him money and drops. And it's interesting that how quickly he reacts, not necessarily to the money, but to the drops. Yeah. And I guess that's part of like, right now the supply chain is all goofed up. And there's the big disaster in the city that's messed things up too. And so that even places a little more emphasis, in my opinion, on the fact that they were planning on moving away from that. It's like, why? Like, this is obviously a desired product right now. But plot device, whatever. So she says she needs to figure out who did this, who killed her brother, who sabotaged the shipment, all that kind of stuff. And I'm skipping ahead just a tad here, but essentially the next day, it's literally the next day, he's like, "Hey, I got somebody for you." And opens his trunk, and there's a guy he stole out of the hospital. Like that just raised that. I don't know. In the real world, that would raise a lot of red flags.
Yeah.
In the TV world, that's totally fine. Whatever. But I thought that was a cool like illusion. Like that's very comic like. That it's just like ask somebody for something and then they show up with it right away. And he seems a little bit deranged and delusional because of the drugs, I assume. But I thought that sequence was cool.
The cop is a cartoon character for sure.
Yes.
Like no personality, just one purpose, and he does it. Then goodbye. You'll never see him again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So Oz finds Sophia at the funeral. He gets there late and then lies about it. Of course, because he's running around trying to cover his ass and gets there a little late, and then lies about being at the service. But that's just he's a liar. That's what he does. He makes up things to get out of situations, and then he starts. This is where he talks to Sophia about his mother, or the mother that's the fictional version of his mother. He talks about not having a funeral service for his brothers. He said that his mom didn't want to deal with the pity, so they, once she finally got out of her funk, they went out to a jazz club and they danced all night, and that's how we celebrated them. And then he says, she died a few years back, so I never got to ask her about all that. But he essentially lets Sophia know in a way. He lets her know two things. One, I'm just a guy with a mom who's dead, and my brothers are dead too. So he tries to make himself relatable there, and he also, whether or not she ever even thought about his mother or his family, also lets her know at the same time, this is not a piece of leverage you have over me if you ever think you need it.
Yeah.
But Locke, you mentioned earlier that you wanted to say something about the scene where he talks about his mother.
Well, the thing that strikes me the most about that scene is that I think that's going to become a major part of the show. Like, why is he keeping this such a secret? Like, who is this guy really? Because up until then, you think everybody knows him, but in that scene, it's clear that nobody really knows him because they don't know who his mom is or what happened with his brothers. Maybe his brothers, I don't think they're still alive, but what happened there? There must be something significant that happened there. Maybe something with the mobster he alluded to in season 1 or something. He also tells this story that he became the driver for another mobster at some point. So maybe something happened there. So I'm really interested to find out what is true and what isn't true, which is such a cool thing for a show to do. Because normally, in especially in mob shows like this, or in mob movies like this, the characters. They're basically all a little bit cartoony. They're basically all, like you said, comic book characters. But here, every character has so many layers, especially Oz himself, that we as the viewer don't really know what's true anymore. We know it's not true because we saw the mom, but what about all the other stuff he's told so far? What about the mobster? Is that true? What about the way he started driving for the other mobster? Is that true? So I think that raises a lot of questions, which makes it extra interesting to me anyway.
Yeah, I agree. You don't really know at this point what's true that he's saying and what's not, and that does make it more dynamic, in my opinion. So we find out that so Detective Wise brings back Ervad, and he's asleep. He's out. He's sedated from being in the hospital. I think he got shot during the whole.
Yeah, he's the guy that the driver shot.
That's right. So he is out for the count for right now. So they conveniently, by the way, he can't just talk immediately. So they take him to the basement and essentially chain him to the some kind of lawn furniture or something. Meanwhile, I don't know how Oz gets from place to place so quickly, but he heads over to the Maroney compound house, whatever, to basically be told they have him captured. They took him out of the hospital or wherever he was, and Nadia, who is the de facto leader right now, since Salvatore is in prison, basically tells Oz, "Hey, this is your fault. You are responsible for this." She essentially says that you're the kingpin here. What are you doing? Not to allude to Spider-Man, but you know, you're the guy in charge, and he's like, no, this isn't me. This isn't even the family. This must be Sophia, etc. In a moment where he kind of seems like he doesn't have a lot of power, he whips out the pictures of Johnny Vitti hooking up with Luca's wife, which is what his leverage is. That's what part of why he was there in that first episode to get that. He screams "my jacket pocket" really loudly, which just seemed like an interesting delivery. And so I think he had it in his mind beforehand because of things we've talked about to frame Vitti.
Yeah.
But this is where he cements that, because he really now he has like, not only do I not like him, but I can also make Luca not like him because I have these compromising pictures as well.
If I remember, when he got to the memorial, he was going to try to give the folder to Luca, right? And he was basically brushed off, I don't care, get out of here.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but no, yeah. Again, it was like another instance of where he's right up against it, like they're basically just ready to kill him, and he has, that one out, like he always does. It was very interesting. Yeah, I think one of you had in your notes here, Shorey Agdashlu was in this show. I had no idea she was even in the show. So when she showed up, I'm like, oh, awesome. It's like, she's always good in everything that she's in. There's obviously Mass Effect, The Expanse she's very good in. I recommend The Expanse because she cusses up a storm in that show, and like it hits differently when you hear her like just drop F-bombs constantly. It's very good. Yeah, she's done some games recently as well too. But yeah, she's
Mirage. Assassin's
that's
Creed
right.
Mirage.
That's right. She's like the mentor. Yeah. It's cool to see respected sort of character actors like that show up in other media. But yeah, she's always a major plus in whatever she shows up in. So it was a pleasant surprise to see her. So
also not on IMDb.
Correct.
Oh wow,
I thought that was interesting.
Makes you wonder who else.
She's not. Yeah.
That's cool. Interesting. Yeah, it makes you wonder who else some of the character actors are going to show up.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know if that's intentional to hide
I don't
points,
think,
or if that's like a failure on the production company.
Like you spoke about the episode appearances. I think it's just negligence, honestly. I don't think it's good.
Well, in this case, I don't think it's negligence, because I think a lot of people, maybe not her, but I think we're gonna see more Batman characters with like different names and stuff that they don't want to reveal who they are. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe not. We'll see. I think they will, because so far that's happened a couple of times. So
yeah.
The question is who are we going to see?
Right.
Of course,
right. There'll be lots of little Easter eggs in there, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure of it. Yeah. So Oz is going to go back to the Falcone residence. He is now set in his plan to frame Vitti, and the way he's going to do that is have Victor plant the stolen jewels in Vitti's car. Of course, that goes terribly because Victor gets caught in the craziest way possible. It's funny because he like goes to get in the car and one guy finds him, and then 15 bodyguards or like guards run out of the house to attack this like 15-year-old kid.
Immediate 4 stars in GTA.
It's exactly. I was just gonna say it's like in a video game where you like one guy spots you and all of a sudden you're just restart the level, whatever. But in that time, Oz is also going in to see Irvad, who he's able to kind of wake up. He tells him, "Hey, you need to say this name when they ask you.
Yeah,
you need to say Vitti when they ask you." Irvad is like, "Okay, I'll do it," and then he's like, has a quick change of heart and just absolutely. He finds out. I guess he finds out that Victor isn't able to plant the jewels.
He gets a call,
and then
right?
He gets the call, and then he immediately just totally eviscerates the heart of Irvad. And Justin, this is a point that you alluded to earlier with another instance of Victor's stutter really coming out profoundly. And I wonder, that's important right now. I think it's a cool character piece. I wonder if it's ever going to have a more impactful thing, because obviously that didn't impact his ability to do that job. But
right. Well, I think it's interesting. Sorry, so there's 2 parts of that I think are interesting, because I think that his stammer could impact something. However, how the hell are we going to see Vic go through this rest of the series and no one remember who he is? Because the guy who caught him was Vitti's bodyguard.
Mhm.
So at no point is he going to be like, hey, wait a minute. You're the guy who was in my boss's car. And then the 20 other bodyguards who also saw him. Like, I don't know how they're going to play that off. Is it just that they just happen to never run into each other? I don't buy it. I'm curious how that's going to work. It could be there that is when they figure out his stutter, right? That it's like, and they try to interrogate him for an answer. Because you even get a little bit of that when he's talking to the to I guess an escort. I don't know if that's exactly what she was.
She's a prostitute.
She's literally a cam girl. I guess that was her job.
Yeah.
And at first he was cool, and then when she started asking him questions about like different things, that's when his stammer really started to come out. So they're really showing that it's like, okay, when he's not under pressure, he can speak like pretty calmly, doesn't stutter, nothing. Once he gets a little bit of pressure, that's when it starts to come out. And then the more pressure, the more aggressive it becomes. So could we see that later on? Sophia interrogate him or whoever? Who knows? But I'm extremely curious to see how they're going to get away with the fact that like 20 people saw his face.
I really do think that's going to be like one of those easy plot devices, like the plot armor of like, you know, he's just some random kid who probably doesn't look any different than a lot of other people. And at some point, you know, they see him and they're like, hey, don't I know you?
Yeah.
You look familiar. You're like, it's explained away very easily. It's TV. Like, that's just,
I guess.
I like the way you're thinking. It may come to pass at some point, but you see that all the time where it's like, you know, that very stereotypical, don't I know you?
Yeah,
right. But I feel like so far this show has been a little bit more than that, right? So that's why I think if they did that, that'd be kind of disappointing because they haven't done it yet.
Right. Yeah.
I also think you're onto something with the stutter because it's happened twice now in a very prolific way. So that's definitely gonna come back somehow.
Yeah, because Oz even cuts him off. Like he's telling him, like, what should I do? And he's just like, I can't deal with this right now. And that's when he decides to kill Irvad.
Yeah, you'd have to think at some point there's going to be some form of a confrontation where he's kind of figured out or found out. And Justin was talking about him being spotted by like, you know, half of the bodyguard force, I think, for the Falcones or whatever. But I do almost wonder, this is like an off the cuff guess, I almost wonder if they get to him and maybe get him to turn code on Oz and he becomes an informant, and then maybe Oz figures out that he's lying with his stutter and confronts him. And I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but no, it's obviously it's like a Chekhov's gun situation, right? Like he has this stutter. You like 99% know it's going to be some sort of pivotal plot point later on in the season. Just a matter of how it transpires and what it amounts to.
Yeah. So at this point, they go in and they find out Irvad's dead. They immediately decide that anyone who was involved in the heist, the night of the heist, should not be able to leave the premises. They're going to question them all. They get them all and line them up like kindergarten in a line going to the bathroom style, rough them up a little bit more than maybe they do the kindergartners. I don't know. And they line them all up. And at that point, Oz is thinking quickly because they say, like, we're looking for a knife, which is really funny to me because it's like a knife's really easy just to like ditch somewhere and hide.
Mm-hmm.
Or like in my head, I'm like, well, these guys all have guns. Surely they have knives too. Everybody has a knife that's a bodyguard, right? But apparently not. Yeah, that's not the case. Oswald quickly realizes, like, I got to get rid of this knife. He instigates a little bit of a scuffle with Vidi, and then the show wants you to think he's going to plant the knife on Vidi, but he doesn't. He plants the knife on Castillo when he gets in the middle there. And of course, they're searching pockets. They find it. Castillo refutes that it was him. Sophia wants a gun to be able to shoot him. She's not carrying her own gun. She wants a gun to be able to shoot him. And again, Luca asserts his dominance and diminishes her by just taking the shot and taking it out of her hands to begin with, even though she's the one who wants the extreme vengeance. It was her brother, et cetera, et cetera. But no, she doesn't get to have that moment to shine once again. And of course, we see a major thing develop from that as well. But any thoughts on that scene of just the whole scuffle, the quick thinking on Oz's part?
Yeah, it was a little I was a little bit unsure. So I guess he never planned on framing someone originally. But my other thought was, shouldn't he have been a little bit smarter than to hold on to the knife? Like he would have thought he's like this really
Yeah.
super scheming guy. He would have just
Yeah.
ditched the knife somewhere. It's a small little flip switchblade. Basically, I was like, oh, wonder why he held on. Like that's why I'm not sure if he always planned to frame someone. But with the way the scene played out,
Well, he did because he wanted Vic to put the jewels in the car.
yeah, that's
He
what
wanted to frame
that's what I
Yeah.
figured but planting the knife, do you think was involved in his plan as well?
No,
No, okay,
No,
that's why I
no,
was.
he didn't
to
plan
do
on
That's
that.
why.
killing
But
that
then
guy.
that's why, like, why didn't he just get rid of the knife? But again, maybe I'm just nitpicking here.
No, you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, because
But
he was
that's the whole
he
thing,
looked
like,
genuinely surprised. He's like, oh shit, and he like sticks it up his
Yeah.
sleeve. And then I'm thinking, like, wait,
Yeah.
there's no way they're going to be able to find that. Like him just hiding it up his sleeve. Then when he
Right.
picked the fight, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Then again, they play it off you again. You're thinking who he's gonna frame, but
Well, see, first he didn't plan on killing Irvad. He planned on
Yeah.
just telling Irvad, say this
no,
name,
yeah, exactly.
and then they were going to search VD's car. They were going to find the jewels. It was going to be
Yeah,
VD. But once they couldn't do that, once he couldn't appropriately frame
Yeah.
VD anymore, he has to kill Irvad, so he can't
Yeah.
talk. And then, which I don't know why he couldn't have still framed them that way and not had the jewels involved, but like that's just the
Well,
more damning evidence. But
I think if the jewels weren't in the car, they maybe wouldn't believe Irvad and got him to talk, and then Irvad would be able to point at him, and that's why he killed him. I don't think
Right.
he had like a master plan of, oh, I'm gonna frame somebody else. No, I think he killed Irvad so Irvad couldn't point to him.
out of instinct.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
if they had gotten the jewels in the car, then Irvad would have pinpointed VD. They would have found the jewels soon after that, and then they would have just killed Irvad. They wouldn't have been much time to say, oh, Oz told me to do it. But no, yeah, I was just kind of a little bit confused as to what his intentions were in every single moment. But no, yeah, it was still really well done for sure.
The only thing I can think of about why he kept the knife, I mean, one, we don't, it's hard to tell how time is moving in the show. Like some things move quick, some things don't. He was obviously trying to get as far away from that area as possible.
Yeah.
But I think one thing potentially is that he didn't want to just drop the knife because then that would lead to more questions.
Hmm.
And there really was no questioning. The moment they discovered the knife, he's like, oh, he's dead. They're not like, we're going to check fingerprints. Oh, you're a loyal bodyguard. You say you didn't do it. You know what? Let's take this to our DA friend and see if they could do something. Nothing. They didn't even try. They're just like, you have it. You're guilty. Dead. And it's like, okay. And so he might have thought about that. I mean, maybe not. In a way, it looks like he didn't because he was kind of surprised. Like when maybe he was surprised at how quickly they found the body.
Yeah. Well,
maybe that's what caught him
I
off
think
guard.
everyone was on edge and annoyed too, because remember, this was just Sophia's wild card kind of freelancing plan. When everyone found out, like, oh, we have a hostage. Like, what the hell are we doing? Everyone's just like outraged that
Yeah, that's true.
she of all
Nobody
people,
else
this
knew
person that
about
we
it.
like dismissed and discounted. Like, what is she doing? Like, what is, So I think everyone just kind of wanted to be done.
And
with
of course,
this.
the only reason anybody else found out is because Oz told them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also the whole reason that and the whole thing transpired too, though, is that once they saw the body was dead, because Luca was going with her to punish her for it, right? To be like, are you crazy? And the fact that the guy was dead validated her claim that there was a mole in the organization,
Yeah.
right? So that's why he's like, you know what? Everybody involved with the heist cannot leave. And they round everybody up. And so I think there is a little bit of validation for her there. But of course, now with Castillo dead, like that trail's cold. Now it's like, all right, well, we figured it out. It was him. Done. It must have been him. Which I also think is a bit strange. Like how quickly they just were like accepting of that. Where even he was like, I've been loyal. I've done all this and that. And which, sure, everybody there in theory is as loyal as that guy. So, I guess that doesn't necessarily mean a lot. But I am curious to see if they even are, maybe they don't believe it. Maybe they're just like, all right, we're going to kill him and let the person we think actually did it believe that everything's fine.
Yeah, that was my other thought too. How much does she still suspect Oz and a lot of the goings on? You have to think she does, just due to the sheer um, drama that we anticipate that's going to happen with the rest of the show. Like how is it going to continue to still be messy, right? And like, oh, we think this sort of door is closed and open and shut case, and we move on. Yeah, I am a little bit intrigued of what the kind of the fallout is going to be from this sort of smaller incident in a series of these larger incidents that have transpired in the show.
Well, she's very emotional because her emotional reaction is immediately to kill her
Yeah.
friend,
Yeah.
basically, or her
Yeah.
bodyguard, basically. So I think at the end, when she proposes to us to work together, I think she actually means it. I don't think she still suspects him of being something else than being her friend or her equal in this part.
I mean,
'cause-
maybe though, right? Because she does kill that kid, knowing that Oz is lying to her, basically, right? When in the first episode, she's like, "You're really gonna make me do this?" Okay, boom, kills the kid, and she knows. She's like, kid's innocent, like, but I'm gonna kill him anyway just to prove a point.
yeah,
And so we already have that motive from her, where she is willing, at least, whether again when she's a serial killer or not, we don't know. In this case, we know she's a killer for sure.
yeah.
Did she kill her bodyguard knowing that he didn't do it? But now it sets everything else off,
Mm.
right? Now she does have Oz's trust because he thinks that he's cleared, right? But yeah, it didn't go according to his plan exactly, but he thinks he's clear. Now they're dealing with the Maronis, right? Like that's seems to
Yeah.
be the thing, you know. Yes, in what we do see is that she feels the fact that Luca is trying to send her away to Italy. They're like, oh, just get away from this. You know, it's safer for you. Maybe that is just as it is on its face, that it's like, oh yeah, she's just being dismissive of her, and that is her motivation now of like, oh yeah, you know what, let's stick it to them. But I think there might be a little bit more.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think she immediately just forgets or doesn't believe that Oz killed her brother. So yeah, I am very curious to see what her sort of end goal is. Like, what is her plan to for the rest of the season? Maybe to try to set Oz up in some sort of way to get to the truth of who, you know, she. I would guess her end goal is still to find out who actually did kill her brother, because I don't think she believes that the bodyguard did it, but I think she still suspects that Oz did it. So yeah,
Well, at this point,
go ahead.
don't you think don't you think at this point I think she doesn't suspect him at all because
Yeah,
he's
I
the only
agree.
one that couldn't have done it.
Well, and she brings up those jewels too.
Yeah, and she was with him while her brother's body was delivered. So
Right.
I think she thinks he's the only one that's innocent at this point.
Yeah, well, and you bring up the jewels, Ben, which I'm like, how the hell?
Yeah.
How did that happen? Because he didn't have
right.
the time to speak to Vic to take the jewels to Castillo's apartment, right? And so now,
Well, they do go. Isn't that before he meets up with her again? Don't they go and bury the bodies?
Yes.
Doesn't that happen right before that?
Yeah.
is
'cause
it? I thought it was after.
Because he tells Vic, the last thing we see is "Let's dance" with the
Oh, you're right.
conversation between the two. And before that, he tells Vic to go lay in the grave, which was a great scene. I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man, yeah. I want to talk about that one for a minute.
Yeah.
Just after all the mayhem happens and Castillo gets shot, and they basically Oswald, for whatever reason, even though there's all these nameless henchmen hanging out, is put in charge of going and burying the bodies of the Irvad and of Castillo. And of course, Oswald doesn't do it. He makes Vic do it. And then at one point, he tells Vic to get into the grave and lay down. And of course, Vic thinks he's going to die. And he even says as much, like it'd be the smart thing, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, was there anything you wanted to pull from that? I just thought I thought it was a good scene just because it that's one of those points where you still think Oswald, even though he's been pulling all this off and masterminding this stuff, he still clearly feels outcast because he got put in charge of doing the shitty job nobody wanted to do.
Well, he's also still a dangerous man. Like
Yes.
up until this point, apart from the first episode, the start of the first episode, you feel Vic and him growing closer and closer together, and now they're buddies, but they're not. He's still like a dangerous man who can at any moment flip the switch and decide to kill him. Which is, I think, what this scene was for. To show Vic that he's not safe and he's not his friend and he's not gonna die.
Yeah, and I think it was really to kind of teach him what the consequences are if he has like one more. Because again, this is the second episode in a row. Like the first episode, he had the sort of somewhat semi screw up of not handling the body like he was instructed to.
Yeah.
But in this time, it almost completely derailed their plan. I think he was telling Vic that that's where both of us will end up. You know, if you screw up again, like both of our lives are on the line this time. So I don't know if it was. I mean, it was sure it was kind of a threat directly to Vic, but it was more of like a warning that like, hey, we're both kind of in this together now. And I suspect that's going to be kind of part of Sophia's plan is to get to Vic. You know, again, I'm just like theorizing here. That'll be the part of kind of to drive a wedge between the two of them because I would assume she kind of sees that Oz is having more of a dependency upon him and having more, being more of in confidence with Oz. So they're kind of not necessarily that they're growing closer like emotionally, but their fates are kind of almost intertwined at this point due to how closely they work together. So it makes it more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I actually found interesting from that was, yes, the way I think he was actually very irrational when speaking to him, right? Like he was scared, upset. And one of the things that he tells Vic, and this is to me where I felt like this was a very almost too easy of foreshadowing that I'm like, I don't buy it necessarily, but I'm curious to see what happens. He tells Vic, you have to adapt with these people. You have to do whatever you need to do to survive, like that type of talk. And Vic has this face of like, yeah, I know. Like, I'm biding my time to deal with you. And so I'm like, are we going to see Vic betray him? Whether it's to Sophia, to the Falcones, whether it's after Oz potentially becomes in charge and then they take him out and then he becomes in charge. Like, I feel like they're setting that up based on his reaction to that whole speech.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially because Oz is still a threat to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not buddies. Like they're not these people are still. Everyone is out to kill him.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Oz might not do it now,
and he
but
sees
at some point.
I mean, he sees all of Oz's words and actions. He's like, I can never fully trust this guy. I'd be an idiot to, fully trust this guy. I mean, he'll dump, whoever he needs to off to the wayside to get what he wants. So I mean, I'm so fascinated to see how their dynamic is going to play out through the rest of the season.
There's three things that are definitely going to come back. Is that the prostitutes are going to have something to do with it? It's his mom that is going to have something to do with it, and it's Vic. Those three are going to be like his downfall or the thing he has to maneuver around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we didn't really get into talking about the prostitutes, but obviously, really, that's his only alibi. At this point, maybe he's past it, but that was his only alibi for the murder of Alberto.
Yeah.
And that was only because he went to them and asked them, I need an alibi. And then they know that now. They've guessed that at least. Or at least one of them has. And unless that comes back later, I can't see any reason why it was introduced now.
No, yeah. And she even kind of warns him. I forget her exact quote, but she's like, she basically had it figured out. She's like, yeah, that's the reason you killed him. That's the reason you came for me for an alibi. And yeah, the prostitutes, Vic and his mom are like his 3 points of leverage.
Links.
Yeah, weak points of leverage at this point. And in one case, one of his weak points, and Vic knows about his mother. So I really think the sort of confrontation is going to be Sophia's going to get involved with Vic in some way, whether it's like wrangling his arm to get him to turn code or something, and it's going to, I would guess, involve his stutter as well. Like he's going to be able to be figured out with how he's lying. So No, yeah, it's why we're theorizing so much is because the show is so fascinating just through 2 episodes. So yeah, it's very
Yeah.
very
Mhm.
interesting. I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Do you guys think at some point, because it's 8 episodes,
Yeah.
right? So we're a
Mhm.
quarter
Yeah.
done. Do you think Batman is gonna show up at some point? Maybe the last episode or something? Or don't you think?
Maybe Bruce Wayne. I think maybe
Oh yeah,
because they did say
maybe
technically
part of it,
Batman's not going to be in the show, right? That means Bruce Wayne could
yeah,
be in
right?
it, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Part of me says that they won't because they want it to be like it already is a separate series. It's not a Batman story, but
Mhm.
it's really hard to not deny fan service. But also, I don't imagine Robert Pattinson comes cheap.
Well,
Yeah.
they also said it ends 2 weeks before the Batman 2
Oh, really?
begins. Yeah.
Oh,
So this takes place exactly between the two movies.
interesting. Because right
Yeah.
now, I mean, I actually found it very interesting that when you see in the mausoleum, you see the
The headstone.
the headstone on the plaques really
Yeah.
of her brother and everything. And you see it says the year, which is 2022, which is when the Batman was released. So you see, like, this
Yeah.
is all within very short time period. So the fact that this is going to end 2 weeks before or whatever, before the sequel, I find actually very interesting because I would figure they would just time skip to whatever year the movie releases, right? Which is usually what most of those movies do.
Unless I'm
Um,
wrong. Let me check double quick.
maybe it's 2 years,
Yeah,
but
I
even
think
then, that doesn't add up.
I think the show picks up about like a week after the Batman ends,
Yeah.
roughly. Yeah.
It's about a week.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a really small time period, a bridge
Yeah,
between the two movies. Yeah, I could see Bruce Wayne showing up at the very end, or maybe like a post credits, because you would assume Penguin is going to be like in a much higher position
It
than when he
it
is.
says here the Penguin ends a week before the events of the Batman 2.
That's crazy. So this whole series is maybe within a month.
Yeah, I'll say
Maybe.
Well,
weeks.
no,
Yeah.
that's not sure because maybe we'll see a time jump in the series.
Well,
Maybe
yes,
we'll
Yeah,
jump
it could be.
a year ahead or something
it's
in
possible.
2 or
Yeah.
3 episodes.
Yeah, there could be
Mhm.
some sort of a
And-
postscript at the end of the show to jump ahead. So.
I mean, I don't know when they're going to have another season, presuming they are, of Penguin.
Yeah.
But Batman Part 2 doesn't come out till 2026, which I guess isn't that long from now.
Yeah, so they haven't
but
even
it'd just
started
be
anything really pre-production.
Well, I thought
I
I
don't-
also
I don't-
saw that this says this might be a miniseries.
It is. There will be
Okay.
a season.
Oh,
2.
there won't be season 2. Oh, this is one done. Okay.
I think it's so critically acclaimed already, and the ratings are pretty high. So I think if it keeps going as
We'll
well
see.
and it ends on a high note, and the Batman 2 is also a success,
Yeah,
we'll definitely
HBO.
see a
Yeah,
season
it's
2.
money.
Yeah.
Money talks, right? So if they back up enough money to Colin Farrell, he'll come back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, let's end off this episode with that last scene. We've kind of alluded to it, but basically, Sophia is at the grave site or the mausoleum of her family. There's a spot there, and it doesn't really allude to that, but she's looking at the empty spot. Like she sees her father's grave, her mother's grave, her brother's grave, and there's an empty one there. And she's kind of sitting there, and I have to imagine she's not only grieving for her family, but also like pondering her own mortality.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of seems to me. But she calls the Penguin. He comes in. She basically says like, "Oh, we found these jewels and everything," and that's the point where they decide they're going to work together to take this thing over, to take them down, whatever. And yeah, Locke, as you alluded to, that last line of "Let's dance." I have to imagine that at least the next episode is them making some big move. And of course,
Yeah.
the dance referring back to when he talked about dancing with his mother, and whether that was true or not. He also dances with his mother in this episode, so
Yes.
maybe they should have called the episode "Let's Dance" instead of what they did.
Inside Man. Yeah.
Inside Man.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the Last Dance was a good little sort of payoff and nod to the previous scenes in the episode. I think also Luca was Carmine's brother, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so she's pretty much the only surviving like immediate family member, correct? So again,
Yep.
they're kind of kindred spirits in that regard. Again, they're both the pressure, they feel the pressure on themselves to maintain their family's legacy and to provide, and not, especially in her case, she doesn't want to see her family unravel when she is kind of sort of the last remaining remnant of it. So again, they're kind of kindred spirits in that regard. So yeah, it's very, very it makes it even more fascinating their dynamic at play. And yeah, I'm very excited to see how it plays out and what their plan is. And you have to assume it's very short term, short lived. Like they're not going to be buddies and pals, kind of arm in arm, king and queen of Gotham's crime syndicates for long. So yeah, I'm going to see what their plan is and how they eventually grow apart. So it'd be very interesting.
Well, I think the open plot point right now is, okay, he still presumably has a deal with the Maronis, right?
Yeah.
He promised not only his stash, but that there's another shipment coming in, which is the shipment that she's a part of. So I'm assuming that the next episode's going to go into that, where how is he going to navigate dealing with her? Because obviously he wants to get rid of her. He wants to take over the whole thing. So how is he going to get rid of her? How is he going to navigate that shipment, which might be that entire episode, I would think. I'm sure maybe the episode name is already out, who knows? But that, I think, is going to be where all the mess is of his navigation between both of these families now at a higher level. Because, I mean, Sal, whatever, kind of, like, he has to deal with the fact that they wanted their guy back alive and he's dead. So now he has to explain that. We didn't see that yet. And we have to assume that they'll know. Right? He can't just be like, I don't know, I couldn't find him, right? Like, that's not good enough. So he has to deal with that. He has to deal with trying to navigate all that without Sophia finding out. Because whether Sal and his family know doesn't matter. Like, they already think that, yeah, he's betrayed them, so it makes no difference. But she can't know. So that, I think, is going to be very, very interesting.
One thing I was thinking of, I can't remember specifically if he's shown or not. Do we know that Vic knows that Oz is meeting with the Maronis? Like, does it ever show him like outside of the prison in the car or something or anything like that? That's one thing I'm thinking of in terms of leverage he would have. Yeah, I don't know. No, I'm just thinking again of like what points of leverage it could have on him. Like if Sophia confronts Vic and what he knows, like he knows about the mother. Does he also know about meeting with the Maronis? I don't know.
I have the other episode titles here because they're all up.
Oh wait. Do we want to do that?
Oh, we don't have. They don't give anything away. But
okay. I haven't looked at them, so
I was just thinking because the next one is called Bliss, which doesn't tell you anything.
I think. Yeah, I think Bliss may be the name of a drug, possibly.
Ooh, from Far Cry 5. Yeah. Maybe, yeah.
Or maybe that's the name. I don't know. Maybe that's the drug they're gonna get from the stash. I don't know.
Yeah, the new name.
Yeah, new product.
That could be it. Yeah.
Well, any last high level thoughts so far? Or do we want to wrap it up?
Well, I mean, we were planning to talk for 30 minutes an episode, and we've been here for 2 hours, which goes to show how great this show is. I think there's so much to talk about, and I can't wait to see where it goes, which is something that doesn't happen very often anymore. Ben, maybe you can relate to this, or maybe you guys can too. It reminds me kind of Succession in the way that I really want to know what happens next, and I really am invested in every single character, which doesn't happen anymore with new shows, with me anyway. Not a lot anymore. So I'm really, really intrigued. I think they did a phenomenal job, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so we'll be back next week. Basically, we'll just a little housekeeping after every episode of the show. We'll record pretty much right away as long as we're all able to, and we should be able to, and then upload it pretty quickly thereafter. I hope to also have this on audio podcast services. So if that's your preferred method, you can switch over to that at some point. And then at the beginning of the show, I put everybody's Twitter handles on the screen. So feel free to follow along. We won't have it. We're not doing like a special channel for this show. We're not doing a special Twitter, whatever. But if you want to follow along with any developments with the show, feel free to follow us over on Twitter. And yes, I do anticipate that future episodes of this show will be a little shorter, unless they drop like an hour and a half bombshell on us with 1 million plot points, and we want to cover them all. So
if Batman shows up, it's going 4 hours.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, cool. Well, I've already forgotten that this is The show's called Cobbletalk. We went back and forth with names, so I'm still trying to remember the name. Thanks for tuning in for the first episode of Cobbletalk, talking about episodes 1 and 2 of The Penguin. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next week. Same place, sometime. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.